Hello, welcome to the Year 13 Information Evening, the alternative information evening. We decided to deliver this in the same way as we did with the higher education information from back in the summer, with the presentation with an audio attached. And as you will be aware from the email I sent last week, I'll follow this with a Zoom on Tuesday evening between 5 and 6. So if there's any questions that you have in relation to the presentation or Year 13, then feel free to come along to that. You're welcome to email questions in advance. If you're not able to make the meeting, then obviously just drop me an email anyway. I waited until today to record the presentation, partly because I wanted to see what the first day back in school was like for Year 13 students. And I must say it's been a really super day. It's been great to have the students back in school, and actually they've been in incredibly good spirits. I actually have left a packed study library to come back to my office to record this. So that bodes really well for the next few weeks as we settle back into school routines. What I'm hoping to cover in this presentation is on the slide that's in front of you at the moment. So thoughts about the year ahead, which actually includes a little bit of reflection on the months past. I'm then going to talk about the key dates for Year 13, particularly focusing on how we're going to assess progress, how we're going to be able to use the progress that students are making to predict grades, how we'll be reporting, just so that you know the information that you'll be getting over the course of the year. I'm going to touch on the future plans timeline, although you did have the 4 presentations in summer about future plans, so some of that will be referring back and just sort of refreshing and updating with anything that we can do from the summer holiday and onwards. And the final part is some Year 13 specific arrangements, such as ideas about home study and driving, but also just to reinforce some of the messages that we've been sharing with the students in relation to them coming back to school in a safe environment. Rather than overload in one presentation, what we've decided to do is do several of these over the course of the next few months. So rather than pack into this all the information about the UCAS application, which will be very much well underway before Christmas, November, December, and with that the personal statement, references and Art Foundation course applications, we've decided to do that in a separate presentation and then send that to you in a few weeks' time. So with the students returning to school today, we took some time out this morning to reflect on the last few months and the range of experiences that the students have been through. We talked about how for some of them there had been a very harsh reality of the current situation, with some of our students having suffered bereavement, of close family, which has just been so difficult for the students and also for their families. Also talked about how many of our students have parents who are key workers, have been on the front line trying to help at this time, and talked on an individual level about students who have struggled with anxiety and found themselves feeling quite isolated during lockdown. But we also thought with them about the positives that they can take away from the last few months. And whilst some of them have perhaps done things they wouldn't have done before, so some who have been exercising, as so many people seem to have been doing through lockdown, some who have learned a new skill, many students in the year group who have learnt new languages, or students who have decided to take up cooking. So we started to think a little bit about what have been the positives. And one of the things that we highlighted to the students is that the message that everybody has shared is the importance of a sense of community and of working together, whether that has been by being out on the streets clapping for carers, whether it's been sort of within the family community, whether it's friends, whether it's been quizzes on Zoom. What we identified in a time of crisis is the need for people to work together and to support each other. And it was absolutely that message that we launched in with this morning, that the coming back together in school and the working together is going to be one of the most important parts of making this a successful year for all our students. And we highlighted how important it is for students to talk to us if they're struggling, and also if they notice each other, other students struggling, that to just tell us so that we can make sure we can offer our support. So it was very much the sort of the theme of our session this morning, was about working together as we move forward, and feeling positive about that. I spent some time this morning in assembly reflecting on the experience of the students who have left the sixth form, left in summer, so the year 13s who were due to sit their A-levels, and reflected on what we'd learned from that experience. So obviously after the initial uproar when the students were awarded grades using the mutant algorithm, they were eventually awarded their centre assessed grades. And at that point, I can honestly say as a school, we were happy, we were content, because we knew that our students had gained the results, had achieved the results that they deserved. And we've always been very confident in predicting how the students are going to perform at the end of A-level. You'll have heard me give messages before about being so sure that it's the student's approach that will determine how well they do. So having for years spent time seeing how students progress over the 2 years of A-level, we've become quite good at realising what behaviours will result in which grades. So the students who gain the grades that they need, the students who gain the grades that they deserve, it's never been a surprise when that happens in the August of year 13. It's always been something that we've seen on a journey because of their approach. And that certainly was the case this year, that the students who have walked away with the centre assessed grades that reflect the effort, the hard work, the approach that they've had for the last 2 years, and therefore gaining the grades that they deserved, were no different. There were a few students, and I shared this with year 13 this morning, there were a few students who were disappointed with the grades that the school had awarded. And in most cases, we had a discussion. They came in with parents and I had a conversation with them. And there was a common theme to each of those conversations. And the common theme was the student telling me that I might have had a good paper. I could have done better. I would have done better. As I said to year 13 this morning, most of the arguments for why students were going to do well, or their arguments for why they felt they were going to get a better grade, were based on things that they believed might happen. But as I explained, that also might not happen. And what was going on around those students was that others had proven already, they had a track record of their assessments, of their work ethic, of their approach to learning, and weren't relying on what might have been or what could have been. And it absolutely reinforced the message that we've shared from day one with students when they join sixth form about this idea of approach and success. And once again, I shared with them a slide that I share every year, which shows the behaviours of those students who achieved the results that they were proud of, and that they that then opened up a multitude of doors for them. And it's those behaviours on the screen there. So as I said to year 13 this morning, it's not rocket science. It's very much the simple messages that we have been giving for the last year, and that hold absolutely true for this year as well. So great attendance, being in lessons, making sure that you're there to hear the ideas being explained, ask questions, hear the discussion, hear misconceptions being resolved, use of free periods. Most students in year 13 now are doing 3 subjects, some are doing 4, but the ones doing 3 have 23 free hours a fortnight. That's a great amount of time to be able to work the year. The ones who are doing 4 subjects will have 14 over a fortnight. So again, a good chunk of time in school, which can be incredibly productive. As I said earlier, I have to say that seeing what's been going on today and after school, I'm full of hope about that. Revisiting notes, getting help from staff is just such a fundamental part of success. And again, it's about working with us if they're seeking help from staff. Good organisation, accepting the criticism when things don't go well, revisiting Year 12 work, structured revision plans, not doing too much paid employment, and most of all, taking the advice and working with us, back to that sort of sense of community, all striving together to help the students to do the best that they can. I did say to them that the best that they can is not just about the grades, it's, I mean, that's a part of it, but what we want is to be able to see the current Year 13 have the results day that other year groups have had for the last however many years, where the students are leaving with the great results, but actually the students who are leaving us are happy, they're confident, they're ready, they're resilient and ready for the next step. And that's very much what we're trying to help our students to achieve. So with our positive outlook, we're ready to move forward. And at this point, I think I'm going to share with you the key dates for the Year 13 year. What I will add into that is that this is as they are at the moment. Of course, there could be changes that are beyond our control, but this is how we've mapped out the year. So next week will be the first full week with new timetables. New timetables being the new plan that we have with students returning to school. Be good for them just to settle back into the routines that they're used to. The week after that, the third week of term, is an assessment week for Year 13. And after I finish this slide, I'll spend a little bit of time talking about that assessment week. I'll also, in the following few minutes, talk about how that assessment week will inform what we're reporting. But as you can see from the key dates, there will be a report issued on the 7th of October. We then head towards October half term. We return from October, and again, there'll be a second assessment week. Again, I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. Following that, there is a second report. And the week after that, the first parents' evening. As always with sixth form, we'll have 2 parents' evenings. We head into Christmas, and beyond Christmas as the terms get a little bit shorter. So we head into term 3, and the penultimate week of term 3 is exam week, the formal exam week. That's still in place, in the same place as it has been in previous years. We're confident that that's the right place for it. February half term, so that exam week is over and done before February half term, and many of the students will just switch off, I hope they will, and unwind in that half term before the pace picks up again after that half term into March. We return in March, the third report will be issued, and following that will be the second parents' evening. That takes us into the Easter holiday. Now, depending on everything running as it has done in previous years, although I'm sure you've heard on the news recent discussions about whether exams are going to be pushed back, but no confirmation of any of that at the moment. And certainly our plan is to work towards the expected start date, which will be mid-May. The exams tend to stretch over 4 or 5 weeks. Normally it's 2 weeks before May half term, and then 2 or 3 weeks after that. And of course, I put my very hopeful date at the end, which will be a Year 13 prom. Sadly, that wasn't able to happen for our leavers this year, but I'm full of hope that we might be able to do that next summer. So just unpicking the information about the assessment week, and I've shared this with the students today. So it is important that both the students and staff are able to take stock of where the students are up to, take stock of where we are in terms of measuring progress, so that we can help to inform the next steps, and we can plan accordingly, and the students will know what they need to do to improve. Obviously our students didn't have the formal exam week they were expecting in May because of being in lockdown. So as you will be aware from sort of previous correspondence, what we didn't want to do was overload them at the start of September, at the start of the first few weeks back. but we did feel that there was this was a good time and place to be able to start assessing the progress for the content that was covered last year. Certainly don't intend to examine the students on a year's content, but as you'll know from my email, what we've done is narrowed down the content as students have had revision plans. They had those just before the summer holiday. It was great to see many of the students come in the last fortnight of the summer holiday to work through these revision plans in preparation for the assessment week. It will just be one paper per subject. We're confident that that's going to give us a good measure of how the students are doing. And we're formalising it in terms of where they're sitting it so that they get that sort of sense of occasion, which I think they need. They'll take place in the drama hall. So for the week of the 14th, the students will have exams in the morning of that week. So they'll have no timetabled lessons for period 1 and 2 when the exams take place. And if they don't have an exam, I'll explain how they work in a second, and they'll be able to revise in the study library and just prepare for their next examination. So the way that we've structured the exams for that week is roughly split into option blocks. On Monday, any subject they have in option block A will be examined in the morning. The hour will probably be starting at 9 o'clock. We'll confirm the details, but we expect they'll start at 9 o'clock, run till 10. Students with extra time would be able to finish a little bit later. The maths in option block A won't be examined in the morning on Monday. It'll be examined, as you can see, on the Friday. This is very much about capacity of the drama hall, given the constraints that we're working with at the moment. On Tuesday, option block B. On Wednesday, option block C, apart from drama. And on Thursday, option block D, apart from maths and the further maths, the second further maths paper. And those subjects that haven't had their exams Monday to Thursday, so maths, further maths paper 2 and drama, those examinations will take place on the Friday. So following the examination week, we will produce and we will report to parents and students 3 key pieces of information. So the first will be the percentage the student has achieved in the paper. The second is a projected grade. So the projected grade, the key word there is realistic. So this is a grade which will be based on the performance in that paper. It will be based on the performance of the students through year 12. In many cases, we had finished, by the time we got to lockdown, we'd finished all the content that we wanted to do for those summer assessments. And departments were in a really good place with the year 12 students at the point we went into lockdown. So as a result of finishing those courses, there had been many assessments through the months from September onwards. So we won't be doing our projected grade based purely on this assessment week coming up. The projected grade will also reflect the performance of the students during year 12. It will also take into account the work ethic, obviously back to my approach and success. And also we'll be sort of thinking about how similar students have performed previously to make sure that we're giving realistic projected grades. That will be, or it could be a split grade. So it could be, for example, A star A, or it could be AB, or it could just be a single grade. The other grade that we will be reporting at that point is a UCAS grade or an application grade. So a grade that would go onto a reference. That will be a single grade. And the difference here is that it is realistic. It has to be realistic. Otherwise, we're setting the students up to fail later on. However, what it is optimistic. The projected grade sometimes it's like to be a little bit more cautious, or it has been in the past, but it is realistic. So the UCAS grade being optimistic is thinking about what the student could achieve if they move up to 6th gear, if they have the right approach. Because what we're trying to do is make sure that they are able to apply for courses or apprenticeships which are ambitious, but they're also realistic that they could get there with the right approach. We would always do this at this point for year 13, and sometimes students will be keen to work out whether those grades can be lifted before they actually apply. So for example, for the university applications, the majority of our students, apart from the early applicants, the majority will apply in late November. That's still early. The UCAS deadline is actually January. So what we've always said to students is that, of course, we want to lift those grades. We want to give you the best predictors, right, the best UCAS grade that we can. So what you need to do is demonstrate that you are capable of getting a higher grade. And this, as I say, has been in place for the last few years. So what we've decided to do is to pull two things together. So have another assessment point, again, to try and help the students to help measure their progress, take stock of where they're up to and work out the next steps. But also that will give them a chance to see if we can lift that UCAS grade. And that would take place that's all on the calendar, that takes place in the first week back after half term. So it could well be the case that after that exam in early November, the student by that point is back into the stride of things, their progress is improving, and we're in a position to lift that grade. And those students might want to just wait until that's happened before they finalise their UCAS application or apprenticeship application, if that's what they're looking for. So support with work and sort of helping students through their courses. Obviously they've had the revision programmes. We're very keen to make sure that they have as much structure as they can. Many of them took up the opportunity to come into school in the holidays where they could quietly revise. You'll know from previous emails that I've sent that in terms of our restructuring of the school day, we've lost registration in an afternoon. So we've gained a few minutes here, there and everywhere, which has allowed us to add 15 minutes to period 5 every day. So students, if they have a lesson period 5, have a 75-minute lesson rather than 60. The study library is open all hours, and actually because of not being able to have year 12 and year 13 working together, the study library is allocated solely for year 13. It's open from early in the morning and students can stay there till about 5:15, and that might extend a little bit as things change. I've emailed before with the idea of us looking at a period 6 option, so that students would have an extra hour every fortnight in each of their subjects. At the moment, we're just looking at the detail of that, and we're looking at the need for that in all subjects. And then I'll get back to you on that in a few weeks. There'll be an update, as it says on the screen, after the first assessments. This year, we've been really fortunate to employ some of our year 13 leavers. The details of this are all being finalised. We have some absolutely superb students who have finished in year 13, ready for the next step, but are on a gap year, who are going to be available to be subject mentors for exam students, so year 13 students, year 11 students. There will be some one-to-one support, there'll be some group support, and we're quite excited about that. Some of that has already been in place in the last few weeks, and we've seen tremendous benefit of that. So that will be something that we're exploring, working with departments to identify students who will benefit from that. But that's something that I'm very hopeful about. There will be after-school sessions. At the moment, everyone's just finding their feet back in school, but I'm sure that there will be drop-in revision sessions. I'm confident that those will be in place as they always have been, and certainly when that's the case, we will inform parents. And then there is always the offer, and I said this to students today, there is always the offer of support from me, from Mr. Dubbridge, just to try and make sure that students are staying organised, staying on track. Some students need a lot more support with structure than others, but they just have to ask, and we will try and provide whatever it is that they need. So the next area I'm going to move on to is a bit of a refresher about future plans. I certainly won't be repeating everything from the earlier videos that you had last summer. They're all still tucked away in the folder if you want those. So this slide just reminds about the options. The university, whether it's this year, deferred, gap year, art foundation, college course of further education, studying abroad, apprenticeships, internships. So the options are exactly as they were in previous presentations. And I've left in this presentation the timeline that I shared last summer, which is just recognising what has happened already and highlighting what would have happened. So I'll be just talking a little bit about some of these areas as we go. And then this is where we are with the year 13 timeline for future plans. So strengthening application, we know that some students were very active over the summer holiday, particularly with so many of the online courses that were available, just to give them more super curricular activities to be able to talk about if they're applying for university or apprenticeships. September, as you can see, is where we are now with the information evening. There will be personal statement sessions for all students. The early applicants have actually had that already. They had that last summer. The personal statement sessions will take place the week after the assessment week so week of the 21st of September. Support with online applications, that's all to come in September. In October, we recommend that students are starting to think about shortlisting their choices if they're applying to university. And obviously their assessments from September will help to inform the grade requirements of the places they're looking at. Early applicants are working on a different timeline. Their applications will be done and submitted by the 15th of October. They're working separately as a group at the moment and have had other input before summer holiday to make sure that they're ready for that early application. References will be written, so staff will start to write references and predicted grades, as I've said, confirmed, but just remember that they are grades that can be reviewed in November. Careers interviews, we're just finding our feet with how that's going to work, but our external careers advisor will be coming in every week from October onwards. As we head into November, for students who will be having interviews, whether those will be them attending universities or apprenticeships, or they will be virtual, we'll be able to provide support for those students. We're still keen to go with the school early deadline for UCAS end of November. There's certainly no indication that the universities are changing their timelines. Apprenticeship planning, the apprenticeship window, as I said in a previous presentation, tends not to kick in until sort of January, February of year 13, but we start to make sure that students are planning, that CVs are ready, letters of application are ready. Obviously careers interviews will continue. Heading through to January, where we have the official deadline for UCAS, so students can wait until then to apply if they would like to. Careers interviews throughout. We head towards that exam week, which is that one that I mentioned earlier, the penultimate week of term 3. Students are expected to put their final submissions in for their firm and insurance choices by May. That's providing the universities have made their decisions by March and decided which offers they're making for the students. This is, I guess, subject to revision depending on how things pan out over the next few weeks and months. So support with planning for the future. It's one-to-one conversations that I think are the most useful, and students just need to ask. Many of these have been happened during the summer, happened before the summer, and I highlighted that in previous presentations. What we really want students to do is come and talk to us, just drop us an email, come and talk to us and give me some advice about, am I applying for a good spread of universities? Can you suggest which universities I should be looking at? Can you suggest any universities that might have a slightly more flexible offer? These are all conversations that really need to be one-to-one, just personalised. Each student has different requirements, each student has different circumstances. The same with apprenticeships and gap year plans as well. We are more than happy. It's an open invitation just to get in touch, to have a one-to-one conversation. Extracurricular and supercurricular, just to mention those. Clearly, with not having activities week and opportunities for work experience, some students are worried about what they can put into an application to plump it out, to impress and to stand out from others. Bearing in mind that all have been through the same lockdown, and so others won't have been able to do the work experience and the other activities our students planned. So we're all in the same position. But we do have lots of ideas, and again, we can give those ideas and tailor them to the students' needs. Quite a few students were keen to do a TEFL course that we'd talked about offering in Activities Week. We've been in touch with the company and they're quite keen to offer something possibly over a weekend in school. So we've got lots of ideas with that. We just, if students want any advice, they just need to ask. Careers interviews as well. I've said in a previous presentation that the careers advisor is fantastic for knowing about local opportunities, particularly for employment and apprenticeships. I think that she gives great advice for that. Probably university advice is probably best coming from school, from in-house, and we will always do our best with the apprenticeships and employment advice. But the careers advisor has a finger on the pulse of what's going on in the local area in Gloucestershire. So again, students just need to ask if they would like a careers interview. So moving on to a few specifics in terms of arrangements for Year 13, again, all discussed this morning in our session. In Year 13, students are entitled to have some home study. It is important that we don't sort of wrap them in cotton wool forever. In a year, they'll be heading off, whether it's university, whether it's gap year, whether it's employment, and very much in charge of their own time, and they need to be able to get used to managing that themselves. So we need a bit of a halfway house between Year 13 and next year. We have abandoned home study in the morning. We abandoned that some time back after we realised that it was just being used as a lie-in. However, students can have some home study in the afternoon, but as you would expect, there are sort of conditions attached to that. Students will have a form that they'll be expected to complete and parents to sign as well. What we wouldn't do is say that they can go home every afternoon, even if they're free every afternoon. What we don't want to do is in any way lose touch. We normally allow 2 or 3 afternoons of home study, and that is very much dependent on the students being up to date with work. If there are concerns, then we would pull that, and I'm sure parents will support that. It must be that the students are going home. We do allow a driving lesson, although I'm actually not very sure about what's happening with driving lessons with COVID. But if that is possible with an instructor, then we would allow that during a free period or a couple of free periods. Really important that they don't use the time to do paid employment. Given that they're in full-time education, there will be consequences particularly for the employer, but also for the students as well if they were to do that. And as I said, we would withdraw that if there were concerns. And just to add that home study, we won't launch that until we've had the assessment week, and I've explained that to students this morning. So final points, sort of thinking about how we are looking after the children in school, all of the children in school, 1,500. You'll have had a very lengthy letter from Mr. Rand explaining all the detail. I spent some time with the students this morning just explaining to them that there may well be some procedures, some expectations, some rules that they don't understand, that they think are ridiculous, and that they just can't see why they are in place. But I have explained that behind every decision, behind every rule, there is a context, there is a big school community. Everything is about keeping safe 1,500 students and 200 staff. So what I've said to the sixth form is that it's so important that they respect those, and that they appreciate that they are really important as role models, that it's important that the younger students see the older ones setting that example. And I've asked them to really demonstrate that and show that level of respect, and I'm sure that I can count on that. We talked a bit about bubbles this morning. Year 12 and 13 are different bubbles, whilst there may well be mixing socially out of school, there can't be in school, and so that does make for some sort of slightly odd setups at times. Equipment, very much in their interest to have that equipment list with the sanitizer, the mask, etc. Just have that ready and be organised. We've talked about break, lunch, we've talked about use of the common room today, and where they're allowed to go. The days of just sort of wandering around school, meeting up with people, are long gone. Students are allocated to areas, and it's important that they stick to that. The timings of the day, I think we're all getting used to that. I must say I'm struggling after the first day and working out who's having lunch when, who's having break when. But we'll get used to it, and it's just everybody being very aware that things have changed, and having it written down everywhere, I think is my solution at the moment. And as I said, those procedures that they might question, but I've asked them to make sure that they respect those. So from parents asking for your support, we really appreciate it if you could, wherever possible, make sure that appointments, sort of have holidays there, I don't know whether that's even relevant really, but keeping appointments out of school time wherever possible, please. To help support us with students being here all the time, and being punctual. Sometimes with students driving to school, we see punctuality slightly worse. As you'll know, year 12 and 13 are the first to arrive in school, arriving as close to 8:10 as they can, so that we can have that staggered start for the whole community. Keep an eye on the paid employment, please, as well. I know that there is such a temptation with the sort of earning large quantities of money, and many employers are recruit 18-year-olds, and they're often cheaper labour. But we do see students get very tired, and often wrestle with the demands of the A-level courses and employment. So where possible, please keep that to a minimum. Ask for your support with the dress code, so that we don't need to have confrontations and conflict. Students know what the rules are, and we ask them to respect those. Driving, I've written home about that already, so you will have seen that information. I'm not sure quite what the social scene will look like for them, whether things are sort of returning back to how they were, but certainly year 13 will be the year when the majority of our students will turn 18. And as I've said for the last few years, what we will struggle to cope with is students having 18th birthday parties midweek, and the after effects of those the day after. And if 120 odd of our year 13 have a party over the course of the year, then I think we can say goodbye to A levels and their productivity. In terms of monitoring work at home, we've encouraged them to stay here as much as they can. It's such a good environment for them to work. Those who are at home, just sort of keeping an eye on their work. There shouldn't be many evenings where the students don't have a couple of hours to do. Equally, the other side of that, if you have a son, daughter who's working every hour, and working late into the night, again, that won't be very productive. Let us know. And that's sort of my final point on that slide. Please feel free to get in touch at any point if it's a concern, if it's just something you want to talk through, if you're a little bit worried about something or uncertain, or you just want to know how we think things are going, please just get in touch. Email is always the best way, and it's always the email direct to my school account rather than replying to the emails that come from Catherine Lady Barclay. They don't get back to me very quickly and very easily, so emailing hcarn@KLB School is always the best option. That's the one that I see all the time. But please stay in touch. We will stay in touch too, so there will be other presentations to follow in the next few weeks and months, and we'll certainly make sure that you know what's happening in the school for your children. So thank you very much for sitting through all of this. I'm sure it must be somewhat strange just hearing the voice over the top of the slides, but I think that's probably better than you seeing me as well. I hope that you found the information useful. As I said at the start, if there's anything where you think we can provide more information, or there's any questions that you have, there's a Zoom on Tuesday, or just pop me an email. Thank you very much, and I hope to speak to you soon and also see you at some point soon. Thank you.